Hello, good morning. There are only few of us, but we should start, I think, because we should keep the program going. So the morning session is on. My name is Dimitar Djilianov. I come from the Agro-Bio Institute of the Agriculture Academy of Sofia, and I will give the floor first to Professor Antoaneta Kirova for her presentation.
First of all, let me present myself. Oh, thank you. Let me present myself. My name is Antoaneta Kirova. I have been dealing with the issues of transports and logistics since the beginning of my academic career, which is now going on, though a little bit aside from what I have been doing until now. The second, I would like to express my satisfaction and thank the organizers for being invited to be a part of this conference, particularly because I am very much interested in the relationships China-Bulgaria, and I hope that the future is bright towards deepening all these relationships. I have had the honor to visit China twice as a member of a delegation visiting the University of Ningbo, Technological University of Ningbo. So I was lucky enough to be able to even observe the construction of the highway between Ningbo and the airport in Shanghai, which was very impressive. So I would very much like we Bulgarians, especially those who construct transport infrastructure, to be able to follow and to use the experience of our Chinese colleagues in the field of construction of infrastructure, the know-how, the technologies, and so on. And now let's go with the presentation. Excuse me for the color. I was not able to reach all the science of the conference, so it is maybe a little bit different from what is expected to be. But the logistics issues come to be in the background of my presentation, of my paper in general. New options and opportunities, which are coming now. They are, in fact, in reality, since 10 or 15 days, so it is quite fresh as an information. Naturally, as you know, the Belt and Road Initiative, which is in the background of transport, logistics, mutual connections, and so on, focus on transport links and integration. In this connection, in this field, I would like to mention that the Belt Road Initiative is quite in, I should like to say, hand in hand with European transport policy, which is also focused on integration, on transportation links, transborder connections, and so on. Though we should mention also that 2 years ago, the European Commission suddenly decided to start a new initiative, the United Portal, which is somewhat parallel to the Belt and Road Initiative. I am among those who believe in the Belt and Road Initiative, so I think that Bulgaria should join and be a part of it. As a matter of development, of course, it is developing. The pandemic somehow lessened and slowed the pace of the development. Nevertheless, in 2019, the World Bank made a very big research on the problems of Belt and Road Initiative, and it named several barriers, among which some technological barriers. One of them is right to the border of China. Here comes Mongolia, with a very poor railway infrastructure on one hand, and single track. which is a track belonging to 2 centuries ago, maybe. What is interesting for us is that the connection between China and Southern and Eastern Europe should deepen, of course, but here we have again transportation issues which have to be overcome. Here I would like to mention something. Bulgaria and Turkey as neighboring countries, of course Turkey is not a member of the European Union, are somewhat competing for the Belt Road Initiative, and in this competition we lose, of course, because Turkey is investing heavily in infrastructure, which makes it quite eligible to be a partner in the initiative, while Bulgaria is slowing. I should like also to mention that Turkey and Ukraine are competing each other according to their geographic position and would like to make the most of the initiative. So we are a little bit backward. But years ago, it was spoken about the Maritime Silk Road, which is quite eligible for our country because we have 2 ports, Varna and Burgas, belonging to the Black Sea. So we have already made so-called first steps towards joining the initiative. Besides, I would like to mention something else. Bulgaria and Turkey and Ukraine, all of us belong to the Black Sea Economic Cooperation Organization. So we are really interested in all that is going to be deepened as a relationship with China and other countries of this region. Actually, the Belt and Road Initiative is very important for the Balkan region because the Balkan region has already become a very substantial part of it. As you're going to see on the next slide, a lot of investments have been made in transport infrastructure, mainly in Serbia. The second place belongs to Greece. Actually, Greece was the first country that could boast of attracting Chinese investments. A very good example of turning the crisis into an opportunity. Because the crisis in Greece, the financial crisis in Greece years ago, actually attracted foreign investments, and Chinese investments came to this country. Of course, this is not a diagram made by me. This is a diagram of the Green Finance and Development Center belonging to Fudan University. But I have mentioned that a lot of my colleagues dealing with Chinese investments in Bulgaria are using information from this organization. So this is somewhat newly extracted graph until 2022, so this year, which actually gives a very clear picture of the investments in different sectors. Of course, I know that the topic of this conference is mainly agricultural cooperation between the 2 countries, Bulgaria and China, but you should see that a lot of investments have been put into transportation. Има ли как да светне върху? Okay. Here is transport, as you see, and here is logistics. Actually, if I made this diagram, I should not divide transport from logistics because it is one and the same thing. Logistics means that it includes transport in itself. Never mind, a lot of investment have been put into transport. Of course, there are other sectors of the economy also interesting for Chinese investments. Serbia ranks first in terms of Chinese investments in the region and mainly in transport infrastructure. Finishing, upgrading, maybe I should mention that Serbia is making a comprehensive reform of its railways, meaning to attract first foreign investment, among which Chinese and Russian in the first place, and second, because Serbia is a candidate for EU membership, for which reason it attracts funds also from the European Union.
I'm sorry, we have 2 minutes more.
Huh?
2 minutes?
I'm not speaking.
I'm sorry, 2 minutes.
2 minutes, okay. Transport and logistics have a strong presence both in construction and investments in, as I already said, in Serbia, and the second place in Greece. What about Bulgarian-Chinese cooperation, present and future? I'm afraid I'm going to take up 2 or 3 minutes more. Bulgarian-Chinese cooperation is, of course, developing. Meaning in trade relations, there are mutual interests in both countries. Of course, the trade balance is negative. We import more than we export. Still, especially in agriculture, there is big interest from the Chinese side in our agricultural production. Here I have mentioned another other industry sectors like energy, automobile, finance, communications, cloud platforms, and so on. And the last 2 slides. What are the transport infrastructures that are interesting according to the Belt Road Initiative in the first place, and in the second place to deepen the economic cooperation between Bulgaria and China. Here you see a picture of the international North-South transport corridor. As you see, the main corridor is in red. It starts from St. Petersburg, going to Russia, to Azerbaijan, Iran, and India. Now, because of the war in Ukraine, you see the blue part, there was an extension to the North Sea, Baltic Sea, North Sea, further to the Mediterranean Sea. And here, Bulgaria should, through the Black Sea, become a part of it. This is a very good solution to overcome the territory of Ukraine because of the war. And the last slide, the new information is that transport corridor number 8, which is really essentially a Balkan corridor, has started to be developed. Of course, it is a political decision. The idea of the corridor exists from years, but now I'm happy to allow our politicians and foreign politicians like Albanian, Serbian, and Macedonian, that they took the final decision to start Corridor 8. It will improve the connections from South and Eastern Europe and the Mediterranean through the Balkans to the Caucasus, the region of Central Asia and the Far East. And thus, Corridor number 8 is a big step towards joining the Belt Road Initiative on the side of Bulgaria. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor Kirova. The next presentation is Dr. Georgi Bakyov, if I correct.
Thank you for the floor. My name is Georgi Bakyov. Recently, I graduated as a doctor in international law and international relations at the Institute for the State in the Law at the Bulgarian Academy of Sciences. Let me present a quick and sketchy presentation about forest protection in comparative perspective in China and Bulgaria. Forest protection represents a significant collective phenomenon, a legal and social principle in itself, related to the larger aspiration of humanity to achieve an ecological balance of human activity and sustainable development. Scientific and technical progress has a dark side. Its negative impact, global warming and increasing needs of mankind for sheltering, skyrocketing heating costs due to the tensions in international relations, consumerism to own and use material products and cosmetics, careless human activity leading to fires. All these issues, all these factors, excessively in large sizes, had left us to the point where forests are disappearing at unprecedented rates. Deforestation could be considered a driver of outbreaks of zoonotic diseases like the COVID-19, thus it directly threatens the human population at all. It creates also a social damage. It is accompanied by organized international crime and corruption. Both Bulgaria and China are adhere to the international environmental rule of law and are concerned about the conservation of their natural resources. These countries are characterized by a significant percentage of afforestation. In China, woods vary between 21 to 24%, while in Bulgaria they reach up to 35%. The regulatory principles of forest protection in Bulgaria and China share some common features, but also hide their differences. The differences come mainly from the fact that there is still no international legal act directly dealing with the issue. Unfortunately, there is still a lack of dedicated and comprehensive instrument on a global level that deals solely with the issue of forest protection. Forest protection norms are scattered throughout numerous international instruments, but only regional ones. State and private financial and political interests have prevented the implementation of the initiative, although this is a matter of global planetary importance. Despite talks at the global level, pressing society and green organizations, we do not yet even see the real beginnings of someone taking up this policy on a global level. The issue is not new. It has been a subject of debate in informal organizations like the G7 group. Universally, it was commented at the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development in Rio, held in the distant 1992, but it fell victim to an unhappy fate, which is a disappointment of the greatest degree. In Bulgaria, forest protection is a multi-level phenomenon with deep political, social and legal roots. This issue is dealt mutually by the state and local authorities, numerous non-governmental organizations, individuals and the scientific community. The country has a long-standing tradition in the legal settlement of the public relations related to the management and use of forest territories. Its independent state legislation on that dates back to the end of the 19th century, immediately after the revival of the Third Bulgarian state. Till the end of the monarchical ruling and the creation of the first republican constitution, a total of six laws on forest management were adopted. The new 12-year-old Bulgarian Forestry Act sets up a vast legal framework for the conservation of forests. To the law there is a separate complex Regulations Act. It introduces a number of new and modern requirements for forest management. It categorizes certain areas for special forests. With an eye on protecting the ecology for the future, it includes planning as a basis principle and introduces very strict regime with number of prohibitions and restrictions. Subsidiary norms for the forest protection regime could also be found in the Environmental Protection Act, the Law on Protected Territories, the Law on Organization of the Territory, and the Biodiversity Act. There are also many optional programmatic instruments. The directly involved authorities in Bulgaria include, but are not limited to the Ministry of Agriculture, the Ministry of Regional Development and Public Works, the Ministry of Interior, regional and municipal structures, the mayors, state enterprises, state forestry farms, and state hunting farms. The main body is the Forestry Executive Agency created specially for the purpose. Along with Bulgarian national law and international norms, the state should comply with the general European legislation on conservation, restoration, and sustainable management of forests. In 2015, the EU adopted a resolution on a new forest strategy to ensure a consistent and coherent approach to all policies and initiatives related to the forest sector, which should immediately bound the state. According to the latest European environmental policy, the European Green Deal, you know, Europe is in the strive for transition to a modern, climate-neutral, resource-efficient, and competitive economy. As with the Bulgarian state, the legislation of People's Republic of China in the field of forest protection is undergoing a long evolution during the latest decades. In recent years, the Asian state had made great and ambitious effort to strengthen forest protection and to regulate more comprehensively the activities related to protection, cutting and processing of woods. Chinese law comes with a number of significant improvements aiming to better protect its biological resources, to promote sustainable development, and last but not least, to contribute to the national policy of building an ecological civilization. Unlike Bulgaria, in its relationship with the European Union, though, there is no supranational authority over China, so the country sets its guidelines and introduces its own policy and legislation. The country has followed a long path of socio-economic reforms in the struggle for accelerated development and industrialization. At the same time, we could easily see that it makes an effort to manage in the best possible way regulation of forestry. In recent years, China has promoted sustainable forest management, implementing large-scale greening activities. China has also significantly increased administrative control over logging. The main legislative act in the area is the Forest Law of People's Republic of China. It was adopted in 1984 and revised in 2019. The law contains substantial norms regulating forest management, rights and obligations of the competent authorities, rules for inspection and control, provisions for liability in the event of offenses. The new amendment legislative initiative represents one of the most significant steps not only regionally but globally in the fight against deforestation and puts the state on the right track in pursuing its goal of being an ecological civilization. Subsidiary norms we could track also in the regulations of the implementation of the law, the Water and Soil Conservation Law, also in the law on urban and rural planning. The base of the legislation of the Asian state about forests is the fundamentally established principle of Article 26 of the Constitution of the People's Republic of China. It told us that the state shall protect and improve living environments and the ecological environment, and to prevent and control pollution and other public hazards. According to the same norm, the state shall organize and encourage afforestation and protect forests. The main governmental body engaged in forest management is named State Forestry and Grassland Administration. It could easily be concluded that both the Bulgarian and the Chinese state share some common features in their legislation. It's not coincidence that the two countries enjoy mutual commercial and investment interests precisely thanks to their substantial and modern legal frameworks, which presuppose the contractual basis of Bulgarian-Chinese relations to be constantly updated, as describes it Professor Tian. China and Bulgaria share a common goal, the protection of the environment, climate and biodiversity. They are guided by the basic principles of international law. Bulgaria, however, is ahead of China both in historical aspect and in terms of complexity of the regulatory framework, since the country is subject to both national and the more advanced supranational EU law. But Chinese legislation enjoys far more extensive influence. Chinese forestry law had the potential to positively impact and deter illegal activities and corruption in timber trade on a global level. However, the efforts of both countries should be directed towards the realization of a general legislation at universal level. A multilateral act which is still lacking, but if drafted, will pave the way to stopping the destructive anthropogenic activity leading to deforestation and to establish the much desired harmony between man and nature. Thank you.
Thank you. The next presentation is of Link Ma.
University. Thank you for being here. I'm so grateful for this chance to stand here to present my work. I shall be speaking about the agriculture automation, a comparison of Bulgaria and China. During the next 10 minutes, I will keep this brief. Firstly, I'm going to introduce I'm going to introduce the agricultural automation in China. The idea of agricultural automation has emerged, changing the structure of contemporary agricultural production. The agriculture irrigation automation, application of the automatic control technology, and also the application of image perception technology, which is mainly for real-time monitoring the group growth in remote control of agriculture pest and irrigation actual. This will helpful for farmers to find and manage pest and disease in a timely manner, and avoid the expansion of pests to damage farmers' interest. Also, we have application of computer vision technology. This will achieve several functions like recording production information, automation, identifying the quality of agriculture product, automatic harvesting, and other functions. Previous study has reported that various applications are gradually penetrating in the production line and taking effect this decade. Also analyzing the factor that influencing the new technology adoption in specific area and the region. This is also one of major interests of research. What we have known that the adaptation between agriculture environment and technical automation is firstly based on the virulence sensor network. Real-time online monitoring the field characteristics has been carried out. Secondly, drip irrigation technology has been introduced in arid situation and locations. Thirdly, joint spray system has been operated in the vast land and forest. Last, equipment can achieve harvesting without human supervisor, and they also the research are discussing about these techniques are still in the process of improving the subsistence performance for the long term. These two paragraphs show that the level of China in agricultural automation has dramatically increased, including total power of China agriculture machinery in 2021 is 1.078 billion, with a 2% increase compared to 2020. Here must mention that intelligent equipment, intelligent agriculture equipment, 5G and other information technology has entered in the production line, with more than 600,000 trackers and harvesters equipped with the satellite network, navigation, and at most 100,000 plant protection drones, with more than 40% increase year by year. The production of cotton with the machine continues to grow faster, with an increase of 3.27%. One of the reasons behind this move is thanks to the positive political policy and the subsidiary by the government side. This leads me to my next point. The Bulgarian agriculture industry is distinguished by the production of the oil, rose oil, dairy product, and wine. They have a lot of. They are built it on the farm, and with a majority of farms, small farms. The rural population is downsizing, with a 2% annual decrease in 2020. According to the available data, as of the year 2008, the growth rate of the usage on agriculture machinery keeps stable at 15% per year since 2006. As the indicator number of tractors per 100 square kilometers of the arrow land in Bulgaria shown. According to a survey conducted by the Bulgarian Modern Trade Association among its member companies during June and July last year, the main obstacles to Bulgarian business environment include incomplete legislation, lack of communication between the government and the private business. Also, contradictory administration of justice and slow judicial procedure. However, its strengths include low tax rate and high internet coverage and good IT infrastructures and the growing purchasing power of the consumers. Although the basic conditions of China and Bulgaria are quite different, but we still have a lot of successful practice since we signed the first agriculture agreement in 2004. So far, mutual agriculture communication are taking place, and we have exchanged a lot of opinions and automation technology in agriculture. We have already reached 260 million, with the 36% increase to 2020 compared to the last year with the total amount trade amount. Bulgaria and China has exchanged with each other in expanding production and introducing automated production technology in order to meet the market demands. So that's all will be my presentation for today. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Next is Galina Patamanska. Там трябва да бъде. Ето там, при тези колеги. Да.
Dear colleagues, my name is Galina Patamanska, and I want to present a presentation about greenhouse production of tomato. Application of water and fertilizer irrigation technology can improve fruit and irrigation water and nitrogen use efficiency for tomato grown in plastic greenhouse. Tomato are one of the most popular vegetable crops grown in the world. They are healthy food both for fresh consumption in the processing form due to their high nutritional value, vitamin C. Vitamin C and lycopene content, which protect human health. Tomato are also one of the most preferred and consumed vegetable crops in Bulgaria. They are one of the most commonly grown crops in greenhouse. Irrigation technology and method of fertilizer application are the most important factors influencing the yield of the greenhouse crops. In recent years, drip irrigation is widely used in greenhouse. Fertigation through drip irrigation has the advantage of improving the absorption of nutrients from the soil by crops. Understanding the interactive effects of water and nutrient availability is crucial for improving the plant's water and nitrogen use efficiency. This study aims at investigation the effect of application of irrigation water and fertilizer integration technology on fruit yield and water and fertilizer use efficiency of tomato cultivated in an unheated greenhouse. Отидахме накрая. The study was conducted in Chelopechin experimental field near Sofia during the months of May to September in 2 consecutive years, 2019 and 2020. The object of this study was tomato variety big beef. Two-factor experiments were performed with experimental factor irrigation and fertilization. The irrigation was applied in two levels: full irrigation and irrigation rate estimated by evapotranspiration, and deficit irrigation 60% of evapotranspiration. The fertilization was applied at 4 rates of MPK fertilization. Without fertilization, suboptimal fertilization at rate 80% of recommended dose of fertigation, optimal fertilization at rate of 100% of RDF, and luxury fertilization at rate 120% of RDF. Irrigation was performed with mulch drip irrigation system. Watering was carried out with frequency of 3 to 7 days. Deficit irrigation began to be applied from the beginning of fruit setting. Simultaneously with irrigation, 100% water-soluble fertilizers were introduced. Fertigation with different fertilizer rates was given in the treatments 9 times at 7 days interval beginning 10 days after transplanting. Data collection and processing. Тук има много малко, но това е важното. Evapotranspiration was calculated using Pemma-Muntit equation. Microclimate data, temperature, relative humidity, and solar radiation were collected from an automatic weather micro station and recorded in data logger located in the center of greenhouse. Tomato fruits were hand harvesting periodically at ripening. Fruit yield. Identical responses of tomato plants subjected to irrigation and fertilization with different rates were observed in both experimental years. Significantly higher fruit yields of tomato in the fully irrigated treatments and lower total yields of tomato plants under deficit irrigation. The highest total yield of tomato plants under full irrigation and the highest total yield of tomato plants under deficit irrigation obtaining when applying the maximum fertilizer rate. The analysis of variance of the experimental data for both experimental years showed that tomato yield was significantly affected by irrigation but wasn't affected by fertilization. It was also found that the tomato yield was affected by interaction of irrigation and fertilization. Irrigation water use efficiency. The irrigation water use efficiency of tomato was determined by treatments to assess the effect of irrigation regime combined with different levels of fertilization. It has been found that irrigation water use efficiency increased more and reached the highest value in deficit irrigation treatments. The highest irrigation water use efficiency per treatments was obtained in both irrigation regimes combined with luxury fertilization. According to the Duncan multiple range test, the treatments with luxury fertilization that achieved the highest water use efficiency were statistically significant different from other treatments at significant level P,05. Nitrogen use efficiency. For the same fertilizer rate, nitrogen use efficiency was higher in fully irrigated treatments. The highest value of nitrogen use efficiency were obtained in the fully irrigated treatments and applying fertigation with fertilizer rate of 80% of NPK and in 2019 and 120% NPK in 2020. The nitrogen use efficiency, аз май забравих да го превключа. Следващия, нали? Да. Не. The nitrogen use efficiency was influenced by the level of nitrogen supplied. Increasing the nitrogen use efficiency with increasing fertilizer rates shows the high response of tomato yield to nitrogen fertilization through fertigation. The analysis of variance of data showed that nitrogen use efficiency is highly significant affected by irrigation, but not significantly affected by fertilization. Аз не ги виждам хубаво и сега не знам кой е този. In this study, an evaluation of tomato yield, water and nitrogen use efficiency, the following was found. Tomato yield was highest in both irrigation regimes with the highest fertilizer rate applied through fertigation. Irrigation water use efficiency increased with decreasing irrigation level and was highest when applying deficit irrigation and fertigation with highest fertilizer rate. It means that deficit irrigation can be applied in need of water saving, and in its application can be optimized by applying a maximum fertilizer rate. The nitrogen use efficiency was significantly affected by irrigation. The highest nitrogen use efficiency was obtained in full irrigation with an irrigation rate of 100 of evapotranspiration and fertigation with highest fertilizer rate. Nitrogen use efficiency increased with increasing fertilizer rate in deficit irrigation. ANOVA of the experimental data by treatments showed that the interactions between irrigation and fertilization for fruit yield, water and nitrogen use efficiency were statistically significant. The results obtained indicate that the water and fertilizer integration technology at appropriately selected level of irrigation and fertilization could improve fruit yield, water and nitrogen use efficiency for tomato growing in unheated greenhouse. Acknowledgement. The present work is based on researches that are funded from Bulgarian National Science Fund of the Ministry of Education and Science under a bilateral cooperation project between Bulgaria and China, contract number KP06 Kitai 1. Thank you for your attention.
So the next floor is to Rumen Gadjev. Yeah, just a second.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, now I will present some investigations about processes of erosion in irrigation process. Къде е тук? Добре. Това дали може с микрофона там? For introduction, have to say that always exist erosion process where have some activities of irrigation in agriculture, and you see that I for introduction said about the erosion process in agriculture and in particularly in soil surface irrigation process, are commonplace and are of course widespread, natural, as something like phenomena. Basically, with arable lands, this process occurs when the force of water flow, this is a flow for irrigation, in this case for irrigation by furrows, when this force of the hydrodynamical force of flow exceed the resistant forces of the soil and due to their adhesion of the soil. And so on, the soil particles be drained in some cases. It's evident that the erosion process occurs when the hydrodynamical forces of the flow their values greater than the resistance. But this resistive force of the soil depends on the physical and mechanical properties of the soil, and the particle size of the such soil and their shape, the cohesion between each particles in the soil, and so on. But while the hydrodynamics forces are in function of the pulsation velocities of the flow, because in each water flow exist velocities which are so different from the average velocity, and they named pulsation velocities. This erosion process always occurs when they have a turbulent flow regime, and this is so typical this turbulent regime. And in this case, velocity, the velocity flow. The flow velocity carries the erosive influence and pulsating in magnitude, because they are irregularly varying in time, and so that they call them pulsation velocity in magnitude and in time. They are varying. Starting from the nature of the turbulence flows, it's found that the velocity in the cross section of the flow differ of average velocity. This real, because this is the real velocities, they pulsate and varying in time and in magnitude. This pulsation velocity called pulsation are also realized between soil particles and the soil surface and have an impact on them, which form the erosion process. This is mechanical of the erosion process. The different pulsation velocity in given cross section of a flow occurring at a given time have a certain magnitude and a certain recurrence possibility of when they exist, probability of occurrence, or probability coefficient M, which mean the level of this recurrence, this probability of recurrence. For this is this coefficient M. big dependent, this coefficient, on the average velocity, of course, but this is velocity at the whole cross-section, and this average velocity is not the real velocity. Dependent on the average velocity of in given cross-section, and that one coefficient tau. He is well known about turbulent intensity of each flow. For research, analysis, and indicators, each have to take in account the indicators of each irrigation flow. In the analysis and research, various indicators are used to observe the condition of irrigated croplands under given existing conditions, regarding, of course, the erosion process, because in each activities agriculture there exists erosion process, which are normally slope of the terrain and soil bed, agrochemical, agrotechnical condition of the soil, type of plantation, water permeability, physical, mechanical indicators of the soil, and so on. With regard to waterfall, its average velocity, turbulent intensity, the probability coefficient of pulsation velocities, this coefficient m, and the soil resistance to the erosion process, and this is named limiting non-erosive velocity for when have a process of irrigation in furrows. The erosion process itself for a given irrigation flow is determined by the existing resistance of the soil to the erosion process, because each soil and each furrow have some existing force. This contingency is defined by the marginal non-erodible velocity or limiting non-erodible velocity of the soil, reflecting the soil resistibility. Yes, and they have two values, positive and negative. In the situation of a flow circulating the soil particles in the bed at a velocity less than the limiting velocity for each furrow, it's possible at a velocity having a probability coefficient m less than the limiting incompressible m bound. Yes, it is at rest. The whole particles in the furrow, they are in rest. They don't moving when the m is less than the boundary or limiting value of this probability of occurrence. At a flow velocity greater than the limiting non-erodible velocity for a given soil type, with velocity having a probability ratio, but in this case more than the limiting values of this coefficient m. In this case, soils and their particles begins to erode, and so particles are carried out, and exist erosion process. The magnitude of any pulsation velocity is given by the equation, where we saw the average velocity, the indicator of level turbulence, and the probability coefficient pulsation velocity. And this is a table about the level of probability of occurrence, and for each this level we have values of m, this coefficient m. So after that we will explain about that. So resistive forces can be...
I'm sorry, 2 minutes more.
Mole? Da.
2 minuti.
2 minuti.
Da.
Dobre. Under this condition, the at m limiting equal to m maximal, and this level 2.58, the maximum pulsation velocity, the soil surface has complete protection from erosion. But it is not a usual case. For that we, in this investigation, they offered some cases, some values to protect the erosion process between 1.60 and 1.90, where you saw the quantity of eroded soil is not so much, about 0.026 kilograms on the meter square, which is a good level. Conclusions. In the development of inference, it's necessary, of course, to consider the turbulent intensity, the probabilistic coefficient of pulsation, and the resistance force of the soil. And the area of the optimal values of m, this coefficient m, for occurrence, is from 1.60 to 1.90. This will allow to have a very small level of erosion process.
Thank you. The next presentation is by Božidar Kjosev. So he's absent. Now we have Dimitar Sotirov from Kirstendil. No. So this means that this session should be ended. Coffee break. Thank you. Thank you for the attention. Thank you to all the speakers. Yes, if there are any questions, we can have 5 minutes. Yeah, thank you.
Dear colleagues, hello everyone. My name is Antonina Habova. I'm from the University of National and World Economy, and it's a great pleasure for me to moderate this session, the second session focused on people-to-people dimension of China-CEE countries cooperation. Dr. Tian will not be able to join us in the very beginning of this session. That's why I'll have the chance to moderate it. You know the rules. Each speaker has 10 to 12 minutes to present the findings of, from his or her report. So I will not lose your time and the time for presentation and discussion. And I'm really happy to invite Nadezhda Vateva from the Bulgarian Academy of Science. A quite interesting topic and a good beginning, I believe, of our session. Please.
Good day, colleagues. Today I will present to you a very interesting and current topic that explores the important role of cryptocurrencies and the different views and experiences of China and the European Union in regulating the crypto industry. In recent decades, we have witnessed the rapid rise and fall of many industries. They come and go at the speed of light. One of the sectors that has experienced such a lightning and maniac rise in the crypto industry is the crypto industry. In just about 5 years, it achieved unprecedented growth and popularity, grew into a global obsession and attracted billions of investors from all over the world. Almost everyone is already aware of the basic of this virtual industry, but here's a quick introduction. Cryptocurrencies are a form of virtual or online currency that can be easily used for various purposes, including buying and selling goods and services, and for trading and exchange purposes through cryptocurrency exchanges available online. Technically, crypto is a decentralized platform based on blockchain technology, and because it is decentralized, it is able to move beyond the overall control and jurisdiction of central regulatory bodies and can operate freely and without government regulation, which is set to change soon at a global level. Bitcoin is no longer the only cryptocurrency in the world. Today, there is a wide range of currencies in the market to invest in. New ones appear every day, and millions of investors join the craze literally every hour. We can say that cryptocurrency and blockchain technology are democratizing the world of finance. They are taking steps to create a digital future where every citizen will have access to banking services and investment tools. Crypto removes the middleman and reduces the maintenance costs of large banks and investment houses. The technology creates new opportunities and sources of wealth. Also, the centralized financial application or DFS allows businesses to make transactions without relying on expensive banks to create escrow checks or redeem them first. This application can make financial transactions faster, simpler, and cheaper. Since the introduction of cryptocurrencies and their rapid growth, there has been much discussion about whether cryptocurrencies can replace fiat money. The effects a complete replacement of fiat currency would have are still being explored and evaluated. There could be significant harmful impacts of economic and financial stability, or the change could usher in an era of complete global stability. Here is some aspects of cryptocurrency regulation worldwide. Cryptocurrencies in practice still have some regulation in various aspects worldwide. As of 2021, there is an indirect ban on the use of cryptocurrencies in Moldova, Kazakhstan, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and some more countries. A total ban has been imposed in China, Nepal, Egypt, Algeria, Turkey, North Macedonia, Mexico, Kosovo, Iraq, and etc. At least 20 countries around the world have some form of tax regime for cryptocurrencies, and just as many have only anti-money laundering regulations. Most countries in Europe, members of European Union, including Bulgaria, adopt both approaches. Also, the central banks of 9 countries, among them China, Bahamas, Nigeria, and other, want to create competing cryptocurrencies that can be controlled and regulated by government. China has been developing its digital yuan since 2014, but has yet to fully introduce its digital currency. Let's see what is the legal regulation of cryptocurrencies on European Union level. Cryptocurrencies are legal across the European Union with individual member state regulations. Supporting crypto businesses, the European Union is working hard to introduce stricter regulations on the transactions with Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. The EU is preparing to adopt 2 legal acts through which a fundamental reform of the legal framework of cryptocurrencies is being prepared at the European level. The first act is a regulation on markets of crypto assets. The Council Presidency and the European Parliament reached a provisional agreement on the market in crypto assets proposal, which covers issuers on unbacked crypto assets and so-called stable coins, as well the trading venues and wallets where cryptocurrencies are held. This regulatory framework will protect investors and preserve financial stability while allowing innovation and fostering the attractiveness of crypto assets sector. The MiCA sets 4 main objectives: legal certainty, promotion of innovation, appropriate levels of consumer and investor protection, as well as fair market relations and ensuring financial stability. The second act is regulation on the information related The second act is regulation on the information related to transfers of funds and certain crypto assets. On 29 June 2022, the European Parliament and Council reached a provisional agreement on a new bill aiming to ensure that crypto transfers involving European Union supervised crypto asset service providers can always be traced and suspicious transactions blocked. Regulation on information accompanying transfers on funds already requires payment service providers to include payer and pay information with transfers involving banknote, coins, crypto money and electronic money, known as the travel rule. To prevent the misuse of crypto access, to facilitate fund and hide criminal activities and to launder proceeds, this traceability requirement is now extended to crypto asset transfers. This way, a new and more consistent regulatory and institutional framework of anti-money laundering and combating the financing of terrorism regarding the crypto industry is created. The regulations have direct application in European Union members, including Bulgaria. Also, this puts the Union ahead of major powers such as United States and United Kingdom in developing a set of rules for the sector. Next we will see what about China. China was once the Bitcoin trading and mining capital of the world. However, the country's leadership struggles for several years to find ways to control cryptocurrencies, spreading popularity and keep it from devaluing and replacing its fiat currency. As a result, China's government finally banned non-government approved cryptocurrencies in September 2021. But China's crypto ban is not entirely a surprise. The country has maintained a hostile relationship with its crypto industry since 2013, when it rolled out its first set of crypto restrictions. In 2013, People's Bank of China, the Ministry of Industry and Information, and other financial institutions jointly issued a notice prohibiting banks from handling transactions related to Bitcoin. The People's Bank of China noted that Bitcoin was a potential outlet for laundering cash. In 2017, China bans crypto initial coin offering at shut out crypto exchanges in attempt to help weakening yuan and block money from flowing out of China illegally. The country's central bank began to investigate the activities of crypto exchanges in January 2017. This led to decision to ban the initial coins of offering, and later crypto exchanges were shut down. To get around these restrictions, Chinese crypto traders started to use offshore exchanges to peer-to-peer platforms for all of their trading activities. In 2019, attention turns to Bitcoin mining. In April, China's National Development and Reform Commission labeled Bitcoin mining an undesirable industry in its preliminary list of sectors that should be encouraged, restricted, and or phased out by local governments. In 2020, the People's Bank of China reviewed its intention to block over 100 foreign websites offering crypto exchanges services. And finally, in 2021, China bans crypto trading and mining. A document titled Circular on further preventing and disposing of speculative risk in virtual currency trading was jointly issued by the People's Bank of China and 9 other authorities on September 24, 2021. So let's see what is the legal status of cryptocurrencies. The circular says that cryptocurrencies do not have equal legal status with fiat currencies. Cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin are not issued by a country's monetary authority and therefore are not mandatorily accepted legal tender. They therefore cannot and should not be circulated and used in the market of cryptocurrencies. Legal currency and virtual currency exchanges buying or selling virtual currencies and providing information for virtual currency are legal currently. They carry the threat of investigation or prosecution. Also, financial institutions are banned from providing services for cryptocurrencies, including opening accounts, funds transfers, and other activities that facilitate the use of cryptocurrencies. Internet companies and websites are also banned from providing payment services in cryptocurrencies. Also, advertisement for cryptocurrencies are prohibited. So let's see what is the cryptocurrency laws in China. Prohibition on the mining and sale of tokens are regulated in the law of the People's Republic of China and on the People's Bank of China. And more recently, China passed the country's long-awaited civil code and expanded the score of inheritance rights to include cryptocurrency, which are now protected under the new law. In addition to this legislative and administrative policy developments in Chinese courts, have also recently issued a series of decisions regarding cryptocurrency. In particular, Chinese courts have recognized the validity of cryptocurrency as a legal property worthy of protection. The court outlined that Bitcoin has economic value and attributes that make it property. And as a conclusion, I think that crypto assets and blockchain technology are tools and ideas whose time has arrived. Governments, banks, and investment firms are already experimenting with how to respond to this rise of cryptocurrencies. Some see cryptocurrency as a threat, while others see it as a technology that can coexist alongside traditional financial instruments. Some countries encourage the use of cryptocurrencies, while others discourage it. Regulation change frequently, and anyone interested in investing this resource should be aware of them. One thing is certain: capital, people, and the ideas they create flow to where they are treated the best. This was for me. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Vateva. I think, colleagues, that we are really lucky as far as this session gives us the chance to touch upon quite different aspects of the relations between the CEE countries and China, from cryptocurrencies to social issues, cross-cultural communications, geopolitics, energy, and even space. And I'm really happy that now we'll have the chance to hear the presentation of Dr. Boris Manov, especially in a very, maybe quite topical title, having in mind that now the Chinese celebrate maybe one of their greatest successes in their space program. And of course, important topic, having in mind that Bulgaria, at least in the past, had its good traditions in space issues. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Hello to everyone, members of the conference, distinguished guests, colleagues, friends. To begin with, I will present about the cooperation between Bulgaria and China, and moreover, a possible cooperation between Bulgaria and China in the space sector. Now, as we know that space is becoming an integral part of our daily lives, we shall see more advancements, more developments, more stuff which will be done with space so we can achieve a progress of our human civilization. To begin with, the historical relations between our two countries, Bulgaria and China, we know that everything starts with the establishment of the Republic of China in 1949. And Bulgaria is only the second nation to recognize the Chinese state, which is quite an achievement, and Chinese statesmen always like to point out, so they make us feel good about it. From there onwards, during the 50s, follow a series of visits, delegations between the two countries by a number of high-ranking officials. Such visits occur in 1954, 1956, 57, 58, as well as 59. Now, during the next 25 years, due to Chinese policy, internal turmoils, and isolationist approach, there is not much action or involvement of national relations between the two countries. During the 80s, though, under Deng Xiaoping and his consolidation of power and a new approach to economic development, the rejuvenation of state-to-state relations between Bulgaria and China resume, and a number of agreements, treaties, are signed between the two countries. In an example of that entanglement of both political and economic relations, the Sino-Bulgarian Committee of Economic, Trade, Scientific and Technological Cooperation is established, helping both countries facilitate all the latter mentioned. With the establishment of the new political order in Bulgaria in the 90s, the national relations do not dwindle between the two. In fact, they continue to thrive and start to establish a new dynamic, increasing both the trade and political entanglement of relations paving a way for their gradual expansion in the 21st century. Now, throughout the first 10 years of the 21st century, the trade volume between the two countries increases almost twofold, and the diplomatic relations between the two countries also continue to thrive. This leads to the signing of the Treaty for Economic Cooperation in 2006 and consecutively the Agreement for the Mutual Encouragement and Protection of Investments. As we all know, China launches in 2012 and 2013 their two major economic and political projects, 16+1 and the One Belt, One Road initiative. These two initiatives stimulate further the enhancement of relations between the two countries, and many other subnational engagements follow with cooperative frameworks and various hubs of engagement. Eventually, after President Radev's visit to China in 2019, the two countries signed a new set of agreements elevating the status of the countries to strategic partners, which really shows Chinese commitment to Bulgaria as well as the Bulgarian outlook to the Dragon of the East. Inevitably, the partnership between the two countries has led to a productive economic relationship where both nations benefit from the continuous aspiration for cooperation between the two. Undoubtedly, both China and Bulgaria have a long history of space exploration and progress both in the last century and in this one. Ever since the launch of the Sputnik satellite, both countries have looked towards the stars and hoped to achieve a spacefaring status. In 1970, under the guidance of Chiang Kai-shek, the People's Republic of China launched their first satellite, the Dongfang 1. 2 years later, Bulgarian technology is used aboard the Russian spacecraft, making Bulgaria officially the 18th space nation in the world. Just 6 years later, Bulgaria sends their first cosmonaut to space, Georgy Ivanov, aboard the Russian Soyuz 33. 10 years later, the second Bulgarian cosmonaut, Alexander Alexandrov, flies again aboard a Russian Soyuz TM-5 mission to the Mir station. Now, China waits a bit more until finally sending their first taikonaut to space in 2003, Yan Liwei, aboard the Shenzhou 6. Taikonaut is the equivalent of a cosmonaut or astronaut in the Anglo-Saxon world. From that time onwards, the Chinese space program really starts to take off, leading to marvelous achievements, including a lunar mission, the construction of an independent space station, as well as a successful mission to the Red Planet. These achievements portray Chinese progress towards space in the last 2 decades, firmly showing their interest in that future key sector. Both Bulgaria and China have a history of space exploration and have continued to make their own strides towards the final frontier. The reason why this is happening must be noted also. Space, as the last unexplored and unconquered sector of interest, portrays many areas of importance. So, next up, I will quickly go over what makes space fascinating and for what reasons the nations of Earth seek to explore the stars. First, space as a strategic sector, it's an important dimension which will be thoroughly researched and examined in the upcoming years. As humanity progresses further in its development, we shall see the incorporation of space as an integral element of our everyday lives. Therefore, I would like to touch on several aspects which will surely be driving factors for the development of international relations and the overall progress of the human civilization. Traditionally, space is a neutral zone. There are 5 treaties signed in the UN which generally agree upon the neutrality of and utilization of space. Out of those, the Outer Space Treaty signed in 1967 is the first and most important agreement ratified by the biggest number of nations, prohibiting the usage of nuclear weapons in space, limiting the use of the moon and other celestial bodies for peaceful purposes, establishing that space shall be freely explored, precluding any country from claiming sovereignty over outer space or any other celestial bodies. This is where we get to the chance for cooperation or competition. When we speak about space, we know that very few nations have the capability to develop an independent, comprehensive space program and to be successful at it. Due to the complexity and immense efforts which space poses, cooperation is of a crucial importance to achieving end goals. On the other hand, competition and contestation has always been at the core of human progress. Competition has helped the development of humanity throughout the years, and the need to create something better and more efficient with the goal and the advantage over the competition itself. Therefore, when we talk about competition and cooperation, we can see both are inevitable actions for the further progress of humanity into space. We have also the economic outlooks. The space sector posits a multi-vector economic opportunities in many different dimensions. The Moon, as Earth's natural companion, will be the first location to be exploited. Asteroids and other celestial bodies will follow and can supply us with resources such as metals and minerals. Space itself as territory will be a subject of interest and control to spacefaring nations which have the capability to utilize and accommodate the space sector to their own economic goals. The future of exploitation of space will help the expansion of the global economy, where space no doubt will become a multi-trillion sector, aiding the development of humanity itself. Now we have also the geopolitical opportunities, where due to the vastness of space and the lack of comprehensive legal framework, the exploitation of space postulates a chance within the status quo, postulates a chance for a change within the status quo in the balance of power. Control of space also means control at the highest ground, and in military tactics, whoever controls the highest ground usually has the advantage and wins. So, just like on Earth, so in space, relations between countries will be the leading factor determining allies and foes. Finally, we have the technological advancement. The utilization of space in the last 70 years has been the driving force behind engineering thought and development of technology. Many of the technologies invented throughout the first space race during the Cold War now are used as everyday technologies. Examples of such are memory foam in mattresses, water filters, GPS, satellite navigation, the mouse of your computer, as well as your laptop. The list goes on. In the future, the colonization of space will require new modern technologies which will eventually reach ordinary people, allowing the desired technology advancement. And this is where we get to potential areas of cooperation between China and Bulgaria. There is the political level, of course, where both countries can create special committees between the relevant departments and ministries, advancing the national space strategies of Bulgaria and China to study and discover opportunities for cooperation in the space sector. Then, such can be also bilateral agreements, accords, and memorandums of understanding ratified by both governments or relevant departments, ministries, showing interest in the establishment of enduring political relations between Bulgaria and China in the space sector. Then we have the technological approach, which can be an exchange of know-how practices from the space industry at specially created forums, the establishment of programs and projects with specific goals to create or invent technology required for future space missions, and we have the transfer of technology and technological knowledge, blueprints and methods of production. Moving onwards to the economical level, that can be Chinese investments in Bulgaria for the development of production plants directly related to space technology. For example, solar panels or antennas for satellites, or composite materials which can be used aboard spacecrafts. The stimuli of the production of the Bulgarian space foods industry is also a possible approach which can be used aboard the Chinese space station or the future Chinese lunar base. Finally, we have the creation of a committee for the identification of possible and potential technologies which can be invested in to be researched and developed and perhaps in the future exploited. Then we have the educational level where we can establish exchange programs for academia, the space sector and other scientists both directly and indirectly connected to space sciences. Moving onwards, the creation of educational space programs in universities related to the space industry and a bilateral exchange of students in universities both in Bulgaria and China. Finally, the organization of international forums helps popularize space and space sciences in both countries. The concluding level is the geographical one. Bulgaria's location in the European Union as well, presents China with a unique chance to work with a qualified and economically feasible professional group, guaranteeing, in the meantime, if there is production in Bulgaria, it can obtain European certificates of quality recognized globally. Thank you for your time and your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Romanov. Let's be more optimistic. Yes?
I have a question.
Maybe in the end of the session? In the end of the session. Okay, thank you for your understanding. Let's be more optimistic and believe that Bulgaria will be able to build on its previous good traditions and achievements in the space sector. But now let's go from the space, go back to our Earth problems. It seems that one of our problems is the lack of true leaders. Experts say this way, and shortage of leadership. That's why I'm really happy to welcome and to give the floor to the director of the association, organizer of this event, Dr. Momchil Stanishev.
Hello, everyone. Dear friends. We are in the people-to-people dimension section. So, what are the people without leaders? I'm going to talk to you about the leadership styles in Bulgaria and China. Not only in Bulgaria, but in Europe and China. The topicality, it's obvious. Overall management of organizations, challenges and changes. This is the leadership. What about the cross-cultural features? The effectiveness in communication of individuals of different nationalities. Why is important? Because it will help Bulgarian, European and Chinese intercultural characteristics, which will be practical benefit for the organizations. Purpose of the paper is to present similarities and differences of leadership styles in Bulgaria and China through comparative analysis. Research task, to examine the essence of leadership, the main theories, applied leadership styles in Bulgaria and China. To examine the intercultural differences by using the Hofstede 6D theoretical model, to compare the cultures of Bulgaria and China. To make a comparative analysis of leadership behavior in Bulgaria and China. So, leadership. There are so many theories of leadership, right? For instance, researchers Yukel and Van Vliet said that leaders involve the followers achieving common goals. For our purposes, we will define the leadership as the ability to direct the group towards achieving goals. According to Sava Jonev, a Bulgarian researcher, the concept of leader comes from social psychology and means an informal leader who rises from the group to lead and organize. For the purposes of this paper, we will focus on the meaning of transformational, transactional, and paternalistic leadership. So let's start with the transactional style. What is transaction? It comes indeed from the word transaction. The leader or the employer, he pays the salary to his subordinate or follower, and that's it. There is no motivation in this style, right? This style is good only for short-term tasks and projects. This style is not effective when we need creativity. And as Jonev and Dimitar said, it's a give-take. Next one. According to Burns, in 1978, he said that transformational leadership is a process in which the leader and his followers support each other towards higher levels of moral and motivation. What the transformational leader do? They inspire through vision, sense of trust, motivation through charisma. They encourage people to express new ideas and ways to change the status quo and the environment in the organization. They demonstrate trust and confidence in the team members through their energy, passion, and enthusiasm. They believe in the potential of the people. They direct the right energies of the people, and they know how to push the energy from the employee or from the subordinate. Of course, they have charisma, they have animated, confident, and dramatic communication style. they have a vision, and they could predict some events for the future. Why not? Now let's go to China. The paternalistic leadership is the predominant leadership style in the Chinese business organizations. Farr and Cheng said that this style combines strong discipline and authority with paternal benevolence and moral integrity. Based on this definition, paternalistic leadership consists of three important elements: authoritarianism, benevolence, and moral leadership. They suggest that the style derives from the cultural tradition of Confucianism. Under the influence of Confucianism, the cardinal father-son relation is quite important and is considered paramount and supersedes all other social relationships. According to the Confucius ethics, the father has the authority over his children and the family members, and the absolute authority and legitimacy, according to Cheng. Now let's go to the Hofstede 6D theoretical model. The dimensions are as follows: individualism, collectivism, power avoidance, more power distance, uncertainty avoidance, masculinity versus femininity, short-term versus long-term orientation, indulgence versus restraint, which is introduced by our author, Bulgarian Mikhail Minkov. Okay. The dimension individualism, collectivism, it's obvious. It defines the dominance of the I consciousness or we consciousness. Defines the role of the individual versus the role of the group. Differentiate the Western and the Eastern types of culture. What is the power distance? In the cultures with low power distance, there is limited dependence of subordinates on superiors. The emotional distance between them is relatively small. In culture with high power distance, there is significant dependence, with emotional distance being high. Uncertainty avoidance, cultures with low uncertainty avoidance are dominated by beliefs that there should be few rules, competition is accepted as constructive, and the power should serve citizens. And in the cultures that are characterized by a strong avoidance of uncertainty, there are written and unwritten rules, precise instructions and norms. Masculinity versus femininity. Masculinity, there is an exception that men are assertive, ambitious, and tough, while women are supposed to be tender and take care of the relationship. For the femininity pole, values such as caring for others and maintaining warm relationship are inherent. Everyone is expected to be modest. The fifth dimension is short-term versus long-term orientation. Cultures with short-term orientation respect tradition and social or status obligations, expect quick results, and have a strong desire to preserve reputation. In cultures with long-term orientation, thrift resources, persistence are valued, although this is tied to slower achieving results. The indulgence restraint dimension. Relatively weak control is called indulgence, and this is characteristic of societies in which the leading idea is the satisfaction of basic and natural human desires. The restraint dimension characterizes societies in which there is relatively strong control. Okay, now this graphic gives us the illustration of the 6D theoretical model for Bulgaria and China. The blue column is for Bulgaria and the other one for China. You see that, for instance, Bulgaria is predominantly a feminine society, while China is masculinity. Yeah? In Bulgaria, the uncertainty avoidance is higher, and the long-term orientation, for instance, for China is higher. And the power distance is equally the same for both countries. On this website, hofstadeinsight.com, everyone could compare any country of the world with another country. Now let's talk about the transformational leadership in the West and the paternalistic leadership in the Chinese societies. They derive, of course, from different theories. They are developed in various contexts with different fundamental assumptions about the rights and duties of the superiors. The paternalistic leader displays power, control, and image building, according to Farr and Cheng. While the transformational leader, as I said already, they display personal charisma and intellectual inspiration, according to Bass. Transformational leader involves a style of individualized care that is similar to the benevolent leadership in paternalism. So there are some similarities. Some researchers say that transformation leaders display of integrity which is similar to moral leadership. And one old Chinese proverb, similarity exists in dissimilarity and vice versa. It means that the Western transformational leadership and the Chinese paternalistic leadership may contain differences, but they could be used in a certain cultural environment, and they're applicable only in a certain cultural environment. Paternalistic leadership is formulated in the Chinese cultural traditions, is also relevant in modern organizations around the world. All leaders in the modern organizations have nearly identical goals: to command, organize, to influence, to take decisions, and to control, which are independent of the cultures. Thus, some aspects of the paternalistic leadership may be applicable only to organizations with Chinese culture, while others may be universalistic and applicable to many other cultures. The three dimensions are derived from the transformational leadership, including individualized consideration, high performance, and modeling, which can be seen as corresponding to the benevolent leadership, authoritarian leadership, and moral leadership, according to Cheng. Individuality shows that the leader respects the subordinates, cares for them, satisfies their individual feelings and needs by giving them appropriate support. This is similar to caring from benevolent leadership. And the modeling in the Western tradition suggests that the leader will emphasize the higher level of morality as well as values such as justice and lead by example. Modeling is comparable to the moral leadership. And some conclusions and wrap up for this presentation. As we mentioned, the leadership style of management in China comes from the Confucian tradition of collectivism, paternalism, and respect for the others, for the state, for the laws, the cult of knowledge. Growth in the hierarchy based on knowledge plays a huge role, of course. The cult of the state, together with the cult to the family and the clan, are extremely strong and become involved in the functioning of the economic political life. The personality is subordinated to a higher degree to the community. For example, unlike the European Bulgarian tradition, where a person's name consists of a personal name and then a patronymic and a surname, you know that in the Chinese tradition, the hieroglyph precedes the individual name, with the emphasis being that interests of the person are secondary compared to the interests of the community. That's quite important. Paternalistic leadership is the predominant leadership style in the Chinese business organizations. The patronage style involves a powerful authority figure who commands influence and respect for his followers and with his followers. The paternalistic leader displays authority, control, and builds image, while the transformational leader displays personal charisma and inspiration. In addition, the transformational leader involves an individualized caring style that is similar to the benevolent leadership. This is a theoretical paper which will be published, of course, with all the other papers of the participants. And when I get a chance, I'll collect data from Chinese organizations, and of course, they will be compared with Central and Eastern European ones or Bulgarian ones. Thank you for the attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Stanishev. Let's hope that we'll have enough leaders. I think that we could be tolerant concerning their leadership styles, but we want to see that these leaders are able to give us much more normality in our life, I believe. So thank you very much. And now allow me to invite Svetanka Dutsova. Is she here? Yes. From the Municipal Enterprise Social Activities, another really important topic.
Hello, everyone. My name is Svetanka Dutsova, and I'm presenting a paper according equal rights for disabled citizens and provision of social service through e-government. My paper is examining the issue related to the rule of law in the People's Republic of China and the Republic of Bulgaria from the point of view of the social system. China is a country with a communist model of government and established traditions in terms of social assistance to the population. Bulgaria has a democratic model of government and a long-standing social system. With the onset of COVID-19 crisis, special attention has been paid to people with disabilities and those suffering from chronic diseases. The introduction of the digitalization process in China's public sector has made it possible to facilitate the provision of social services and reduce bureaucracy. The state declared itself in support of and development of the social sector and introducing the principles of equal rights for people with disabilities. The topic of it's relevant from the point of view of following the process of transformation of the public sector to the electronic provision of services and how it directly affects the social service in China and in Bulgaria. To date, there have been only 2 publications from studies concluded in China related to people with disabilities. The first was published in 1987 and the second in 2006. Over the monitored period of 19 years, there was an increase in the number of disabled persons, an increase in the total number of people with disabilities compared to the general population. According to data from the study conducted by the World Health Organization, it is not possible to determine in which region, urban or rural, there are more people with disabilities. On the other hand, an increase in cases of mental disabilities has been reported among men living mainly in rural areas. A number of actions have been also taken to create an accessible urban environment. Airports in major cities in China are accessible to people with disabilities. The same initiative was taken to ensure accessibility in public transport, buses and underground. Requirements for the accessibility of the newly constructed buildings for people with disabilities have been appointed. Historically, China has developed its legislation by passing laws related to establishing the rights of people with disabilities. Over the years, China adopted a number of laws in the field of protection of the rights of people with disabilities. The development of youth government helps to strengthen the integration and improve the lives of people with disabilities. In 2018, guidelines were issued by the State Council for the establishment of online public services and further promotion of Internet plus government services. This aims to optimize the business environment and ensure the convenience of people and businesses, as well as social creativity and buildings a service over 10 public administrations that will more fully satisfy people's needs. By targeting public services to citizens, special attention is paid to vulnerable groups. Efforts have been made to improve the social security system and public services through the introduction of online applications. Such an application has been created to allow people with disabilities to apply for assistive devices online directly from the government website. The social service can be obtained by disabled persons living in Beijing. When applying online, it is not necessary to provide an additional document for the right to an aid. The app is created to be accessible to all people with disabilities. Anyone can apply for the aid through it from the comfort of their own home by logging in either through the platform or through the website of Beijing Municipal Administrative Service Center. No additional documents are required, which reduce the bureaucracy process. After receiving the application, the platform automatically processes the documents and identifies the applicant and cross-pointed grant through data sharing. Administrative authorities complete the process of data verification and approval of the applicant online. Aids are expected to be purchased online and delivered to users' home within a week. This process is fast and easy, eliminates all intermediate process, no additional documents are required, and allows people with disabilities to receive social services without necessary bureaucracy at any time and without a physical visit to administrative buildings. Social services in Bulgaria have a major role in preventing the social execution of vulnerable groups in society. Support through social services helps them fully participate in the community, exercise rights, and improve their quality of life. In 2020, Bulgaria adopted a law of social service, which is the first special law to regulate all matters relevant to the social service sector. In the way of commitments of the state, municipalities, private providers, and other interested parties in the process of provision, use, planning, financing, quality control, and monitoring of social services are regulated. The rights of social service belongs to all persons who need support that can be provided through social services, not only persons from vulnerable groups. Social services are based on social work, individual approach, and individual assessment of needs. Social services are provided only according to the individual's desire and personal choice. The main providers of social services in Bulgaria are the municipalities. The provision of this law provides that all administrative actions related to the submission and receipt of documents conducted in need assessment and interviewing the applicants can be carried out online. Practice shows that in most cases, users prefer to submit documents by personally going to the administration. A large part of these persons are residents of small and remote towns and villages. In order to submit the documents, they need to travel to the nearest municipality. There is no special mobile application where people with disabilities can submit applications for social services. According to the regulations for the application of the law of social services, any person who has experienced a desire to use specialized social services is referred by a social worker within 20 days of the declaration of desire to use a social service. This creates inconvenience and complicates the process of submission documents for applying for social sector. That is why it is necessary to review the process and apply good and already established practices. That is why China's example of remote access to social services is extremely successful and can be easily implemented in the Bulgarian social system by creating a dedicated application from the online submission of documents. The assessment time will be reduced and citizens' time will be saved. This will make it easier for people with disabilities to file documents and to reduce the red tape. And thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ms. Dutsova. Really, I think, important issue, and I think that we can draw our conclusions from your presentation. And now it's really a great pleasure for me to introduce to you and to give the floor to my colleague from the University of National and World Economy, Associate Professor Elizabeth Ionova, a good expert in energy security and energy geopolitics. The floor is yours.
Dear colleagues, first of all, allow me to express my gratitude to the organizers for their kind invitation to participate in this relevant forum and for the opportunity to share some thoughts and ideas about the topic of energy security. It is especially sensitive but also very provoking in the context of the current energy crisis. Allow me not to read anything from my presentation, just to say a few words according to the slides. I hope it will be more provoking for you to participate later in the discussion. Just to use the... it happens something, I'm not really sure. Okay, thank you. Let's move to the first slide in search for the trends and the patterns in the development of the global energy landscape. In the last decades, the topic of energy security and the development of the energy sector draws special attention on a global level because we are facing now new challenges with regard to the energy industry. First of all, we have decreasing reserves of fossil fuels, mainly oil. We should mention here the peak oil theories. They were just a kind of strange concepts a decade ago, but now they're absolutely proven and indisputable. And these limited reserves are evoking competition between the buyers in the energy markets. For the most part of the 20th century, you have a different picture. This competition was on the supply side, but now it has moved to the demand side. And this competition is dynamized by the emerging economies, or as we call it, the new resource-hungry countries like China and India. And also, this competition is evoking a special alarming threat, a special alarming risk with regard to the militarization of energy policy. And in this condition, energy security is moving to the top of the political agenda and is defined as a fundamental foreign policy goal. Another important dimension is the environmental one. We have the climate change concerns and the call for sustainable development, the so-called ecological footprint. And these new perceptions about the use in which we manage energy is also another major point in the current discussions about the development of the energy sector. Another important dimension is related to the subject of the energy crisis. Even before overcoming the shocks with regard to the financial and economic crisis in 2007-2008, the energy sector had to withstand the blows of the pandemic crisis in 2020, then to deal with the effects of the energy crisis in 2021. And now, since the beginning of this year, we have the war in Ukraine and all the negative implications of this conflict, which are generating a drawing of the world energy map. What was the impact of the pandemic crisis with regard to the energy sector? The pandemic proved the importance of the energy industry. We have such kind of effects which was compared to the situation during the Second World War, a record decline in the global primary energy consumption. Also, we have negative effects with regard to the increase in energy poverty, the decline in the investment activity. But China was one of the major exemptions of the rule. Because it was one of the luckiest ones which demonstrated not only such a decline but also increase in every component of its energy profile. And now, as you see, China had in 2020 the highest rise in energy demand, and also it demonstrated an increase in its carbon emissions. As you see, the shock waves in the energy sector in comparison between the global trends and the achievements of China, Just to explain, in yellow are marked these energy sectors which had a positive score in the conditions of the pandemic. And as you see, this was only the LNG sector, the hydro energy sector, and the renewable energy sector. But China was always on the plus in every of these energy sectors. And it was the largest contributor to the growth of renewable energy, as we will see later. So the global energy mix in the last year, it's for 2021, because for this year we still do not have the final data. As you see, oil was the dominating fuel, followed by coal, natural gas, hydro energy, renewables, and nuclear energy. Here, the most interesting moment was the switch between the positions of the renewable energy and the nuclear energy in the context of the pandemic. And now the renewable energy is closing also the gap towards the hydro energy. What about China? In 2021, in the primary energy consumption of China, coal is the leading fuel, followed by oil, natural gas, hydro energy, renewables, and nuclear energy is in the last position. With regard to electricity generation in China, we have here again coal as the dominating fuel, followed by the hydro energy, and renewables are on the third position. The other fossil fuels, such as natural gas and oil, do not have such a major role in the electricity generation in the country. Just a few words about every of these energy dimensions. The primary energy consumption in China in 2021 was again with growth. As you know, China is the world's largest consumer of energy. It obtained this leadership role in 2010 and now has a share of over 26% of the global energy consumption. China is also the largest emitter of carbon emissions. Its share is over 31%, followed by the United States, the European Union, and India. In the Department of Oil, here China is on the second place, followed behind the United States and in front of the European Union. And China has also a lower position when it comes to the natural gas consumption. Extremely interesting is the picture with regards to the imports of natural gas, because we have here the two aspects of the pipeline imports and of the LNG imports. And as you see, when it comes to pipeline imports, we have here as a major partners for China the states in Central Asia, such as Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and also Russia and Myanmar. However, when it comes to LNG imports, here we have another pattern. Australia, the United States, Qatar, Malaysia, Indonesia, and Russia are the most important partners for China. And as you see, according to the current situation in the energy markets, the Asia Pacific as a whole is attracting more energy supplies than the European Union. And remarkable for the last year was the achievement of China, as it has surpassed Japan as the world's largest importer of LNG. What about coal? As you already know, China is the largest producer of this energy source and also the largest consumer in the both dimensions, with a share above 50%. In the Department of Nuclear Energy, we have also a very interesting trend, because in the conditions of the pandemic, China and France switched their position, and now China is on the second place as a nuclear power in the world rankings, just following the United States, but China is already on the third place. In the hydroelectricity department, we have here an exemption because of this reduction, but it is not also special for China. It is also typical for the global hydroelectricity consumption, and it is a result of the shortage of rainfalls in the last year. But here, as you can see, China is also the leading power when it comes to hydroelectricity generation. As you know, there were very interesting projects in the last years for the infrastructure development in this regard. The Three Gorges Dam or the Baihetan Dam, I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing it absolutely right in Chinese. So what about the most important sector, the renewable energy? As you know, China became the biggest power generator from renewables. And in the last year, it has also raised its share almost with 34%. And now it is the leading power in front of the European Union and the United States. As you can see, this is valid not only for the wind sector, but also for the solar energy, where China is the absolute leader in the both dimension. It has a less important and impressive position when it comes to biofuels. Here you can see the moment in which China became the leader in renewable energy investment, and now it's time to ask ourselves if the European Union is still the renewable energy superpower according to its own ambitions in this regard. We have also impressive targets for the future development of the renewable energy, and the most impressive thing is this short interval between the goals of the peak in carbon emissions and the achievement of carbon neutrality. So I will skip many of the slides because I'm short of time. Just to say a few words about the role of China with regard to the key minerals for the energy transition. As you know, China is one of the leading powers when it comes to the lithium production. It's on the third place, just following Australia and Chile. It is also the leader in the production of natural graphite and also the leader in the rare earth metals production, as it comes with regard to production and also to reserves. So, just a few words about the emerging new energy order as a result of the war in Ukraine. Now we could see that China is described as the biggest winner of this energy crisis because it is reselling energy supplies from Russia to the European Union. And of course, we should ask ourselves if this special development in the renewable energy sector creates also new options for cooperation with the countries in Central and Eastern Europe. And shall we witness in the future more development in the dimension of the green energy partnerships with the countries in our region? Of course, it is also a special risk that this cooperation could fall victim of political instability. Just a quote from one of the European leaders saying that European Union is dealing with such kind of asymmetrical openness toward China. And as the finish of my presentation, one of my favorite Chinese proverbs saying that when the wind of change blows, some build walls, others build windmills, and I hope that this wisdom will define the future energy cooperation between China and the countries in Central and Eastern Europe, because it is showing us that the pragmatic approach is more profitable than the defensive one. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ionova, for this interesting presentation full of data. Now, as I cannot see Dr. Mariana Tian, please allow me to briefly present my own paper. And as I will continue with this geopolitical look at the CEE-China relations, I'm afraid that, I'm sorry, Dr. Ionova, but I'm afraid that I will talk much more about walls than windmills. What I argue is that talking about the CEE-China cooperation, we have one very big difference, and it relates to the strategic environment. The strategic environment nowadays, the strategic landscape nowadays is very, very, I would even say, dramatically different from the one we had in 2012, when this format for cooperation, this mechanism for cooperation between our countries and China was launched. What I mean here, what was the difference? In 2012, this was a rather peaceful, I would say, time. Yes, the US leadership, the US as a global power, hegemon even, was in a relative decline, but still its power was at least not openly contested by the rising powers. The European Union, a quite important factor for us, still at that time in 2012, still demonstrated and exerted efforts to prove itself as one of the global geopolitical actors on the international scene, trying to diversify its external relations, trying to project influence in different parts of the world. And part of these efforts was this declared political will to further engage with China. And as you can see, I've just mentioned some of the results of this engagement with the 2020 strategic agenda for cooperation, with the approval of the connectivity platform as a kind of an effort to find synergy between the Belt and Road Initiative of China and some important EU connectivity initiatives. Then talking about public attitudes, we witnessed back in 2012, we witnessed a kind of a balanced, even positive perceptions, attitudes of the citizens in Europe towards China, which is not the case nowadays. Talking about China, China at that period was in the very beginning of a new stage in its foreign policy and strategy under the leadership of President Xi Jinping, declared president in 2013. What's the situation nowadays? Experts agreed on the fact that we witness an accelerated transformation, dramatic, quite deep processes in the international system. Moreover, not only transformation changes are happening, but there are different interpretations of these changes. On the one hand side, we have the countries from the so-called Western world, the collective West. They're trying and insisting on putting the debate in this democracy versus autocratic states ideological framework, while at the same time the East, namely let's say China, Russia and other rising powers, they insist on the concept that it is about changing world order with the rise of new centers of power. So really different interpretations, but the common denominator is the fact that in both interpretations we see this East-West division and confrontation and even polarization. this situation faces the European Union with the challenge to recalibrate its strategy, but also its policy instruments. What I'm afraid is that in this attempt to recalibrate its strategy, the European Union is losing its ambition to project a kind of strategic autonomy defended, proclaimed by the French president, but not only. It seems to me, maybe I'm not right, that there was a kind of a copy-paste approach on behalf of the European Union when dealing with China, copy-paste from the United States, of course. This principle of decoupling from China, of course, for the European Union, it's not so easy. Not only it's not easy, it couldn't be productive. Just to remember that in the last 2 years, China overtook the United States as the top trading partner of the European Union. And of course, in economic terms, it will be really difficult, not to say impossible, to decouple from China. But what we see at political and strategic level in the strategic documents adopted by the European Union in the last couple of years is that China is proclaimed and defined as the key actor of strategic concern. The focus is much more put on the rivalry than on opportunities for cooperation. And of course, the result is maybe, and the role of the media is, it is not to be neglected here, that we have a deteriorated attitude on behalf of the European citizens toward China. But here I'm eager to say that this is not the case in the Central and Eastern Europe, because still in most of the countries from our region, the surveys show it, there is a much more balanced and even positive attitude toward China against the background of the deteriorated perception in the Western Europe towards China. What has changed in China's foreign policy, and not only foreign policy, diplomacy and strategy in the last 10 years? All we witness a proactive, some say assertive foreign policy, which provoked some preoccupations, threats among the Western countries, and we saw that both EU and US approved their alternatives to the Belt and Road Initiative. I will not talk here about the effects of the COVID pandemic, discussed enough, and I'll go back to the impact of the war or the special military operation in Ukraine on our relations with China. So where is our region in this picture, global picture? Of course, our geopolitical location, which is, some would say it's a miracle to have such geographic location, at the same time being a kind of a center for spreading influence in Eurasia, but also Asia. The region attracts a lot of external powers seeking to project their own geostrategies here in the region. A Polish colleague talking about China's perceptions towards European Union and the Europeans, she says that she sees a kind of a concept related to the concept of Mao's concerning the intermediate zones, which means that according to her, the Chinese looked at us as a kind of a playing ground for big powers. Maybe it's right, maybe it's not. It should be proved, but it was back in 2015 when the then US Assistant Secretary of State defined our region and our countries as frontline countries, and we saw after that that the region really turned into an epicenter of intensifying tensions between Eastern, Western powers, and here appeared China as the new geopolitical actor in our region. So obviously this East-West confrontation and polarization has its projection in our region. And this, of course, affects the country's China policy. How this confrontation affects our policies? Of course, most of the region, but in fact, all of the countries from Central and Eastern Europe, even those that are still applying for EU membership are in a way integrated in the Western structures, European Union, NATO, etc., which does not mean that most of them are open, especially in the field of economics, that they are not open for new opportunities coming from the East. The problem is that having this confrontation, global, but also its projection at regional level, it significantly limits our opportunities to maneuver, to follow our own geopolitical agenda and to prove as independent geopolitical actors almost impossible. And here I've chosen to, sorry, excuse me. And here I've chosen to use the words of a quite known and famous political analyst from Russia, Fyodor Lukyanov. I agree with these words, that's why I decided to quote him. He says that fighting in Ukraine has changed the coordinate system in world politics, forcing all countries to take their position on the current events. So in this sense, I also share the opinion that in a way, we, the countries from Central and Eastern Europe, are facing the dilemma of either or. You are either with us, you will either follow the general strategy of the alliances you are part of, or you are against us. So it is really, how to say, limiting our opportunities to develop or try to further deepen our relations with China in more sensitive fields of our life. But of course, to be honest, we should not omit to say that there was shrinking enthusiasm when we talk about our China policy, even before the war in Ukraine, even before the pandemic. And there are a variety of reasons for such shrinking enthusiasm. Some of the reasons, some delays in infrastructure projects, not enough economic results generated in these 10 years, not enough in comparison to our perceptions and expectations. The persisting problem with the trade deficit and trade structure with China. So there are really a lot of reasons that diminished our let's say this way, generalizing a bit, our political will and desire to keep on developing and strengthening our relations with the People's Republic of China. But of course, the problem with the influence and the pressure on behalf of the external powers is one of these reasons. What about the future of the China-CEEC cooperation? What I'm not confident enough to talk about what will be the future. Maybe it sounds too pessimistic, but I don't believe that it will be, at least at the short term, quite bright, this future. But nevertheless, I prefer to talk about the factors that should be taken into consideration when we try to see our relations, the development of our relations in the future. The first factor that should be taken into consideration is that we witness this decomposition of our region as it was structured when the cooperation mechanism was launched in 2012. There is no homogeneous perspective on the relations with China. Some of the countries from our region are really eager to further strengthen their relations. Some are more moderate in their desire for cooperation with China, and some are quite reserved in this respect. So different interests, of course, we should take into consideration the influence of the domestic political dynamics on the foreign policy of our countries. Generally speaking, there are two different narratives when we talk about our relations with China. I'll be in a hurry. The first one is the value-based and rule-based narrative, which is based on the China threat perception. It is much more ideologically burdened and much more confrontational, shared by some Central European countries, of course the Baltic countries, and much more pragmatic narrative, which is based on the belief that mutual cooperation is mutually beneficial cooperation is possible, and it is possible possible to find a balance between our values and our interests, economic but not only economic. And talking about different narratives and different interests, I think that these differences are really quite well illustrated when we talk about the Taiwan issue. Example of really diverging narratives and deepening differences in China. I would just mention the two extremes: Lithuania, which labeled itself as China-free zone. These are words of the Lithuanian foreign minister, and Bulgaria, which really tries to adhere to the one China policy, no unofficial or official offices of Taiwan in Bulgaria or Bulgarian Taipei, etc., not official exchanges, etc. And one more, last but not less factor that should be taken into consideration: the securitization of the relations. I think that, and maybe we will agree that security concerns and considerations prevail over economic ones nowadays when we discuss our relations, not only with China. Concerning conclusion, I'm not ready with my conclusions. I hope that I'll be aware enough of them when I finish my paper, which is not the fact yet. But a few words I would like just to conclude as a concluding note, so half a minute. First, new dynamics in China-CEE relations obviously is an element of the process of restructuring of the international order. Second, the great powers obviously seek to project their influence and to establish control in different parts of the world, including CEE countries, both Western and Eastern great powers. China-CEE relations will continue to be strongly affected by the dynamics of Sino-US relations, as well as China's strained relations with the European Union. And of course, here, the latter will be strongly influenced by the evolution of the political landscape in major European powers. Yes, we are members, but and we participate in the decision making, but often just de jure. Is it possible for the CEE countries to find a balance between their strategic commitments and affiliation and their interests? Or to put it into other words, how to not make angry our strategic partners while at the same time deepening our relations with China? And really concluding, what I believe that it is up to the countries from the region to work out and implement policies that best serve their own national interests, that does not contradict their duties and obligations as members of the European Union and NATO for those countries that are members. Significant test this will be for our countries, foreign policy, for our foreign policy pragmatism and diplomatic mastership. And of course, China also has its homework to do. China faces the challenge to tune up its policy approach when dealing with our countries. So it is a mutual process, and both sides in this process has their responsibilities. But what I strongly believe that a further confrontation will be a lose-lose situation, so no one will win. So thank you very much for your attention. I hope that I was strict enough with the time, and I think that we have 10 to 15 minutes for Q&A session. Yes? Yeah? So, thank you. I think that, Madam, you...
I have a question that is more of a personal nature. I wanted to ask the presenter. I'm sorry. I'm trying to speak in the top of my voice. Are you aware of presentations made in China at different universities about the drones that have been investigated in Bulgaria? And what is the interest on the Chinese side towards these results of research? If you're aware.
Yes, a brief answer. First, no, I'm not aware, but as far as this is concerned towards the topic, drones fall more into Earth technology rather than space one. they just don't have the availability to be used yet in space. Someday we will have space drones for sure, but to your question, no.
Okay, colleagues, any other comments? Yes, please. Zankova.
I would like to thank all the presenters for such interesting talks that you had today. And I have a question to you, Dr. Habova, about the framework of cooperation between China and CEEC countries. As you have mentioned, there are some big changes in the world order and in various fields of relations. Do you perceive that some relevant changes will be made into this framework of cooperation between China and CEE countries? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Shall I answer now? Yes? Yeah? Okay, thank you for your question. Yes, I think that the new, again, I repeat that I believe that the new situation creates new impediments for our cooperation. And it is, but as always, it's also an opportunity for us to show that we are good enough in our diplomatic skills, in our foreign policy, to defend our interests. But in order to do this, yes, of course, it will be easier for us if we see a kind of, again, use this word, let's say, restructuring of the format. Obviously, it was launched and it was the initiative of China. Maybe we should not wait now for China to decide how to redesign this format. Maybe we, as countries which are interested in developing relations with China, should be more to take the initiative and also decide to discuss and decide as members of this region what to offer to the Chinese side. Because we see countries quitting the format, we see countries that are really reserved when it comes to further upgrading of the mechanism for cooperation. So obviously I think that we need to see a new design, maybe much more flexible, that corresponds to the totally different strategic environment. Otherwise it will be a kind of how to say, just to wait and to see the end of the format. That's my modest opinion. Thank you for your question. Yeah.
Mechanism. Oh, I'm sorry. What do you mean by a flexible mechanism? You mean in the economic sense of the word or in the political sense of the word?
I mean in organizational and structural way, the way we organize our dialogue as countries from the region with China. Because even till now it was quite a bilateral. Yes, that we have these formats and agricultural hotspot here, energy hotspot secretariat in Romania, etc., and we gather all the countries from the region with representatives of China. But it was rather a bilateral cooperation. Agreements were bilateral, etc. So I think that we should redesign the format itself, and the format include economic, political, cultural, tourism, whatever we want.
Naturally, I quite agree with you that, as a matter of fact, within this mechanism for cooperation, there are a lot of bilateral agreements. This is due to, I don't know, to the political and the other, differences between the countries, their interests. I believe that though we are Central Eastern Europe, we are supposed to be a united group of people thinking one and the same. We have different interests. We still have, and we will have. I'm sorry that you did not, that you were not present at my presentation at the beginning. As far as our participation in the Belt and Road Initiative from the Bulgarian side, we are still outside the format. And we're much interested to be a part of it. While the other countries like Hungary, like Poland are already a very big part of it. And I myself am I'm wondering, why did Lithuania went away from this cooperation? Lithuania is a part of all this, and they are going to lose a lot by not being a part of this cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to add, that's why I've mentioned that, in my opinion, security concerns prevail over economic consideration. Yeah, please.
I have remark, not question, to your presentation. It was very good, and the first slide comparing the decade was very good. But I have just one remark. It's not that only EU make change. The changes has been done in China as well. We have Hong Kong. We have a lot of military spending, so EU sees that as well, that we pay our money, our relation in economy are not the same on not the same level, but the money China earns for us goes in not to the society, Chinese society, but to Chinese army. Just this one remark, it's not only that EU changes his attitude, but China changes as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I almost totally agree with your remark. That's why I've included in my presentation that one of the major changes is in the role of China itself. China foreign policy, and not only, but we are interested in it, completely changed in the last 10 years. And that's why I said that we have much more proactive China, looking for projecting influence, control in different parts of the world, not only here in Africa and Latin America, engaging economically, but not only. So a lot has changed in China policy. I'll not, how to say, go into I will not assess the way one country decide to spend the money. It's up to them and to the Chinese citizens and leadership to decide whether to spend on much more on military. Yes, yes, of course. China is not the China we know in the beginning of the second decade of this century, obviously, and we should. But and of course, reciprocity in our trade relations, access for investments, etc., etc. These are issues that are persistently in the agenda of our bilateral EU-China relations. But again, I'm always quite emotional when I'm talking on this issue, and as a person, I try first to find the mistake in my machine. So we pretend to be superpower, economic superpower. I mean, we EU. We pretend to show to the world a unique integration and development project. And it's a real fact. So that's why we lack this courage to defend our interests when we are dealing with third countries. And it is not only China. One, we are afraid to say to the United States, okay, friends, we are allies, but we have our interests, and we are not interested in totally isolating China. Can you tell me what's the political, economic, cultural, or whatever effect of imposing now again after how many years, since 1989, against sanctions? Can you tell me what's the real effect for us as citizens of the European Union to impose sanctions? Shall we change China this way? No. So I think that we should, as European Union, should be much more confident in our ability to influence the attitude of the others, and to try to do it in a much more positive way, not in this way which is self-destructing even, I would say. So excuse me for this over-emotional reaction.
Thank you very much. this team and the presentations that we have made here, I want to add on that point. The day that the nations will wake up and know that they have a particular unique ability, that is the day we will be able to stand for our nations. And a lot is changing, and so much is happening. Political, economic, religion, the systems, education, things are changing. But that day, nations, particular nation, let me call it Bulgaria, wakes up and knows we have a unique talent, which we can stand by it and influence the world. That is the day the other nations will wake up and do the same. This partnership is good because even when a child is growing, is trained how to walk. And the moment the child knows how to walk, is left to walk. We cannot be dependent forever. My message today is the research that we are doing, we should not just do it for ourselves. We do it for our future generations and find solutions for the people. It is all about people. It is all about people. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this really prudent remark. I will not add anything after your words. So I think that it's time to give the floor to Dr. Stanishev to draw some conclusions and wrap up.
Dear all, I remember 6 months ago, we met with our colleagues from Agricultural Academy towards the Ministry of Agriculture. We are colleagues from the ministry, with Professor Todorovska, Professor Tsankova, Professor Yelemov, and our colleagues from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and of course our colleagues from the Bulgarian Academy of Sciences. And everything started like 6 months ago. I mean, the preparation for this conference. So far, we have over 50 abstracts from 12 countries, including China, Bulgaria. We have our friends here from Albania and Poland. The other foreign guests left because they need to catch their flights. And I would like also to thank not only our partners, but also the teams of our partners and the volunteers, the students, all the participants, everyone who helped us, and of course our host, Sofia University, and Professor Maria Stoicheva, the Vice Rector. It was really, really nice cooperation with all of you, and I'm happy that we gathered different organizations from different sectors, government associations. We gathered research institutes, we gathered the state administration, and not but least the business. I'm very glad, happy that we have a business section, which is actually the practical part of the conference, and we have four good, actually expiring presentations of success stories between the connections between China and the Central Eastern European countries, including Bulgaria, the good case study of the startup Ondo, the association of for the development Bulgarian-Chinese cooperation, and the other partners in this business section. I would like also to to put some remarks that I'm also glad that our association, the APEC, between China and Central and Eastern European countries, we work for the promotion of the activities and the agricultural cooperation between those countries. But actually what we did in those 2 days, we managed to include also the people-to-people dimension, which is quite important, because without the people-to-people dimension, we will not have the economic dimension and the agricultural dimension, because the people, as we mentioned during those 2 days, they're the essential part, and the people of our nations of all the countries of the initiative 16+1. So it depends on us, on the leaders, of course, of those countries, on the businesses, on the leaders in the universities, in the research institutes. It's up to them to move forward. And Association for Promoting Agricultural Cooperation between China and Central and Eastern European countries is proud to host all of you, and I'm also glad that we streamed the event in China and Central and Eastern Europe. We have over 6,000 views yesterday and today from China and the Central and Eastern European countries, which is really good. Yeah. It means that there is an interest in this initiative, and the initiative have a future. I would like to invite you for a light lunch after this closing of the conference, to wish bon voyage to our international guests, because their flight is today, and wish you a nice afternoon. And see you again.